Video 5, Pretty Penny Pre-Cuts with the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. Laura Bosma, your stitching host. We're working on Project 3, Video 5, and we're at Step 6 and 7. So you have completely, again, this is the finished version, completely steam fused your truck in place, all your motifs. I hope you remember to let that cool down. Literally, it's going to probably take more than 5 minutes, but let it completely cool. That will make it the most stable if you allow it to come back up to room temperature. I have a trick. If you happen to have granite or any kind of natural stone countertops in your kitchen, gently place it on there. Boy, does that take the heat out of something super fast. And that may cool it down quicker if you happen to be in a hurry. We're at Step 6, which you hopefully will do off of camera, and that is, or outside the video, you need to thread your needles. So split your flosses down to 2 strands and thread your needle. You may decide, since I think there were 6 needles in your package if you bought the Floss and Notion kit, that you want to, go ahead and thread quite a few different needles. This project will actually use all 9 colors of floss throughout your project as you finish it. So you may want to get ahead a little bit and thread and knot several. First thing that we're going to do is just do all the blanket stitch portions, and there are a lot of them. I'm going to use this little pointer as my guide. You need to blanket stitch inside the window. You need to blanket stitch all the way around the aqua perimeter of the truck, including the bottom. You need to blanket stitch around the black tires. You need to blanket stitch around, use smaller stitches, the 2 flip-flops. And then you need to blanket stitch around the yellow perimeter of the surfboard. And then we're also going to blanket stitch a wheel and then blanket stitch around here in this portion of the sun. So in interest of time, because hopefully you've been following along, as far as I know, we don't have anybody that's just jumped in for project number 3. They've already practiced either with project 1 or project 2 or have previous knowledge. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and stitch on here. I am going to use contrasting thread, meaning I'm going to use the thread, the wool's complementary color, and I'm hoping it just helps you see what I'm doing a little bit better. I prefer oftentimes to match the threads. That's why you have colors that match all of this. But if you'd like the look of contrasting threads, by all means, change it up to suit your preference. So I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to just kind of hold it in my left hand. And the only place we're going to put a blanket stitch wheel on this project happens to be right there in the center of this. I called it a stylized question mark. Maybe it's a upside down comma or a comma, whatever. But that's what we're going to do. So go from the back to the front. Again, you've already got a knot in your thread. And I'm coming up through the yellow just on the outside of the coral. I'm not stitching through the coral, at least around the perimeter at all, at least not yet. So I'm going to pull up my thread. And again, blanket stitch wheel, I'm going to keep this whole circle thing going. And I'm going to eyeball and go back in the center. And I'm going to come back up. I'm going to swoop my needle and come back up through the sand, through the yellow, outside of the coral, and I hope you can see that well. So I'm coming up right there, and I am still inside my circle even though I'm at a little bit of an angle. And I'm just going to pull on that. The most important thing I need you to remember is, in order to make a pretty drastic curve, which we need to do, I need you to, I'm going to scoot that guy over. He should have been over there. I need you to keep your stitches very close together. So they're going to be probably less than 1/8 of an inch apart. Try not to split stitches. Split stitches means I don't go back into the green yellow thread. I go near it, like one little fiber away, one little thread away. I'm going to go in, I'm going to swoop back up, I'm going to come out the yellow, I'm too far away, and I want to be right at the perimeter where the coral meets the yellow of the surfboard, and I'm going to take my second stitch. And then you just put that on repeat.
And you go all the way around with those tiny little stitches until you've got that entire circular portion stitched. And as I've stated before, I'm not super fast with this, so I want to speed up, but there's no way to speed up. Maybe when Joanna edits, she can, you know, put it on like a comical cartoon kind of a fast speed real quick to get us all the way around. I like a blanket stitch wheel when you're stitching a circular something, not on everything, but certainly on this. I think it adds an accent, a highlight of some additional tinier work right there where we're at. So at this point, I think I'm going to maybe put in one more stitch, and on this one, I am going to go in at the center, and I am going to come out on our coral just to kind of complete that whole idea of a circle. Now my circle got a little bit elongated, but it's not going to hurt my feelings.
And then I want to connect it with the very first stitch, so I'm going to jump over. This last one is more yellow thread-ish, and then it variegates. This one's a little bit more green. I want to go right behind or in between that stitch and in between my first and second stitch to connect it. So there's my circle, even though it got a little teardrop shaped. And then I'm just going to bring my needle back up right next to that stitch right there. And I'm going to keep blanket stitching, but now I'm going in a curve around the curve here. And he got too far away, so I'm just going to coax him back a little bit. My stitches are going to be super close together on the inside of the curve and farther apart on the outside of the curve. And again, you're likely going to do this in matching thread. I'll probably end up taking this out and changing to the coral thread, but for instruction purposes, I really wanted you to see what I was doing. And we did stitch a sun in project 2, so you may already know exactly what you're doing, and that is all good. At this point, I'm going to do a stitch here, and I'm literally going to put one in this concave, this inside portion between the two rays. Or not. I don't love that, and so here's a question that came up. How do I take a stitch out? Whether it's an inch worth or just one, I'm going to unthread my needle. I'm going to use the eye of the needle, the blunt portion way up here, and I'm just going to pick that out. And then I'm going to pick out this loop. And I'm going to try again because that was not what I wanted to do. So let me go off camera for a second, thread this again. I actually wanted to turn it. And now I want to go in between the two rays and out right on the inside of the sun. So there's one. And then I'm going to just put, you can put one or two here. I'm going to try it with just one. One stitch may not be enough. It may just look too chunky as those lines go across. Yeah, and I think it does. I think we need one in between each ray, or in the center of each ray, and then one in between. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to unthread my needle. I'm going to pull the first portion away, and then the second portion away. And try again. Now, if your thread was all matching the mistakes I'm making, they may not bother you. They will kind of sink in, but definitely when you're using contrasting thread, as I am, so that you can see what I'm doing, things that are less than ideal or less than perfect, they're going to show a lot. So that's where you have to kind of decide, you know, do I love using a contrasting thread? If I do, I'm probably going to have a little bit more trial and error than not using contrasting thread. All right, so I think I got it figured out. So I'm putting one blanket stitch right through the coral inside each ray, and then one blanket stitch between each ray until I get all the way around. And that's a little bit different use of a blanket stitch, but I do like it. I like how it highlights along the edge. I like how it's going to highlight around here until we get back to the other side. Again, that was a blanket stitch wheel and blanket stitching. And don't forget, you've got lots of places you're blanket stitching: in and outside the truck, along the bottom, around the black wheels, around the flip-flops, around the diving board. So I will see you back when all of that blanket stitching is done.